Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to the Black Belt Folding session.
So the first thing I did was to look at the protein, um, and well, at the end of this protein where I'm pointing, um, I connected these to make a longer sheet, so I can make 4 sheets that combine together. What I do then is to simply cut between each secondary structure like this, and well, I cut between all the structures, and I rebuilt the helices. And this goes on for a little while until the helix comes together. I guess that's fine now. And then I always tweak the helix to make it ideal. I like to have like ideal helices and sheets, and the sheets are already ideal from the beginning. So you don't have to do anything with the sheets. Only the helices need to be rebuilt. So now this is ideal, and I do this with the other helix as well. And after a while, I have rebuilt the helices, and now I'm going to load a solution where this is where I've got all the sheets with cuts between them, and the helices are built, and I've just moved them together, sort of close together, because I always do this in the beginning, and then I do a save, because if I want to restart the puzzle, I found out that my structure wasn't good or something, then I can go back to this point and start putting the protein together in a new way if I want to do that. So this is the start. I haven't really done anything here. I've just this is just sort of start work you have to do every time you start a Denovo puzzle. So let's see the next one. In the next one, I have put in the sheets together, and there are some choices how you put the sheets. In the previous video, as he explained, because the 2 middle sheets has a lot of hydrophobics, it in this case seemed natural to put them together. This is just with the move tool I have positioned the sheets together. So this is with the sheets together, and I think what I from the later in the later saves, I decided to actually make this sheet a bit longer, because well, it seems like it can without any problem just go down here, and we get a longer sheet. And I don't like loops. I try to get as small loops as possible and make as much as the protein as possible into a secondary structure. So this is with the sheets, and now I want to move the helices, and well, when you move the helices, first you have to check that the side of the helix there with the hydrophobics goes inwards towards the sheets, and the hydrophilics they go outside. So this helix could go down here.
While you're moving that, Tokens,
Yeah.
one small comment. I find it interesting when I'm doing a Denovo. I sort of I saw you were lengthening a sheet. I tend to shorten them slightly to give the loops as much room as possible to play around. And you may have said this already, but if you could open your behavior slider so that we can see which behavior you're using at your different steps. Thank you.
Yeah, so in the beginning I just use full CI because, well, in the beginning I don't wiggle at all. You have to, you don't wiggle at all in the beginning before you have positioned everything in the right place. So this is so now we're positioning things, and this is about where the helix goes, because you can see that we have some hydrophobics here on the sheets, and we want to cover those so they're not exposed. So I used the first helix for that, and the second helix can go over here in the middle of the sheets on the other side and try to cover those. And I've done that in the next save. Let's see. Like this. Okay, so this is sort of actually the most important part of making a Denovo, is deciding how to put the stuff together and put the secondary structures together. So as you see, I have covered the hydrophobics with the helices. And now we have to, well, one other thing, when you are positioning these things, you have to make sure that the loops are long enough that that you can get the that this. I mean, we have quite a lot of loop here. We have a loop here and a loop here, and these are long enough that they can go together if we rebuild this. So the next part I will do is try to rebuild this loop and rebuild this loop so they get close to each other. And of course, if the loops are not long enough, you can't really put the secondary structures where you're going to if the loops can't connect to each other. So you have to keep that in mind while you're putting the secondary structures, that the loops are long enough to connect the different structures. So this is the next step. You have to go to each cut point, and you make bands between them, and then you rebuild each loop so that they fit together and they get relatively close to each other. And you might look a bit at the side chains while you're doing this to make sure that the loops look nice. And the side chains have room. So I've done this. Let's see. This is the next save. I've rebuilt all the loops. And I have bands between them. And now we need to stabilize.
Now, Tokens, you always use the bands to close.
No, I don't use bands to close, actually. I just use bands in the beginning, just to get them relatively close to each other.
Thank you.
But let me explain what I do. I remove this enable cut bands, because if you have cut bands turned on now, this is the first time we're going to wiggle. If you have cut bands on, then Well, the protein will be disintegrated actually, because the cut bands are so strong that they will just pull everything apart. So the first time I wiggle, I don't have cut bands enabled, and I like to keep my structures ideal, and the way to make sure that they don't get bent or anything like that is to freeze each secondary structure. So I freeze all the secondary structures, and I think I have shaken this, so I'm ready to wiggle for the first time. So let's try to do that. Well, I don't know if this wasn't how I wiggled beforehand. You can see that some of the sheets are coming apart.
That's because it's never going to work quite the way you had it all set up. We're hitting every Foldit Murphy's Law today that is humanly possible. But that's okay. Don't worry.
I don't remember. I probably did something to prevent the sheets from coming apart. Usually, you don't need to. If the sheets are coming apart, of course you can start adding bands between the sheets like this. I have another save, so no matter what I do now, it's going to be all right because I can just load the next save. So this sheet was coming apart, so let me just, as a quick fix, add some bands here, and let's try to wiggle again. Well, this looks all right. One thing that you might think about when you're putting the protein together is that these sheets, when they, let me remove the side chains, when they go together, they are anti-parallel. And this is the nicest way to align sheets. And you can see you get these, every second segment, you get 2 hydrogen bonds to the next segment. These sheets are not as nicely put together because they are parallel. And parallel sheets don't make as nice hydrogen bonds. Actually, in this case, at the moment we are missing some bonds, so there should be some extra bonds between these two sheets that we are missing. And you should keep that in mind and try to make sure that you get as many hydrogen bonds as possible later.
Excellent tokens. Is that pretty much what you wanted to show about the initial, what you're looking at?
I just wanted to
hear that I hadn't ever really thought about much before. So go ahead.
The only thing I wanted to say is how I closed the cut bands.
Please.
Let's see the next one. I think I've done a bit of wiggle and shake here. Oh no, I have actually. Let me go back to the previous one. Okay. So actually what I do when I want to close the cut bands is that I still keep the secondary structures frozen, but I add, like this, on every secondary structure I add bands. And usually on the sheets, I add one at each end and one in the middle. And I try to make them zero-length bands. I mean, just approximately.
So you don't actually use the script zero-length bands?
I have done that earlier, but the zero-length band script also add bands to the loops. and I want the loops to be free to move around. So if you use the zero-length band script, you have to remove all the bands from the loops afterwards, after you have run it.
Actually, the most current zero-length band script, you do actually get a choice now. You can ban just the sheets, the helices, or the loops.
Oh, I see. Okay, so if you can just do it on the sheets and the helices, then you can probably just use the zero-length band script.
I was extremely happy the day I realized that, and yeah, I worked without it for a long time too.
Yeah. Okay, but anyways, you can do that, or you can do what I do and just add bands on each secondary structure, and then you can change the band strength to 10, and then when you wiggle, well, the secondary structures will be kept in place, and the loops will move around, and the cut bands will get pretty close to each other. So I don't like to close the cut bands before I get a pretty high score. So this is a good enough score. So now you just close the cut bands. I think that was it. And of course, now you have to wiggle again because you want these loops to get nice.
Very nice.
So that's about what I. This is sort of the start. Let's see. The next thing I did for this particular puzzle is that we have this strand. Okay, let me just say that actually now we know what the native structure of this protein is. So I could have sort of cheated and made a protein to look like the native structure. I haven't done that because, I mean, then I wouldn't.
Fun.
Yeah, it's not fun. I mean, then I would just have said, okay, why do you put things together like this? Oh, this is because this is how the native looks, and this is not what happens in when we get a new puzzle. We can't just look at the native and put things together like that. I mean, so in this case, in the native, I know that this strand I think is a sheet, but the way I've put this protein together, it can't really be a sheet. So I have to do something with this strand, and if you don't know what to do, I mean, well, then a helix is better than a loop. So I just made this strand into a helix. This improved the score slightly, but it's not an optimal solution because it's not good to have sort of this stuff just sticking out. But I didn't have any other idea of what to do, so I just made a helix out of this. And just the last thing I'll open is, this is after I've run this script, tvdl enhanced DRE, just to rebuild the loops. Yeah. One thing I should add here is that when I started rebuilding the loops, this helix here, it got out of shape. It started bending like a banana or something, and some of the hydrogen bonds disappeared because that happens when the helix starts to bend. So I actually had to go back and cut this helix out again and idealize it again and put it back in. And do some rebuilding on loops again. So this sometimes happens that you have to sort of go a step back if the helices or the sheets get out of shape. Usually it's the helices that get out of shape. You maybe have to go back and try to make them ideal again and rebuild them. And this happened in this case. So this is one step I did towards this solution.
Very nice. Tokens, thank you so much.